The scary thing about consumerism is not that it made people buy more things. It is that it changed the feeling of wanting. At some point, wanting stopped feeling like a simple desire and started feeling like information, like the brain had discovered evidence that something was missing. A better jacket, a cleaner apartment, a nicer phone, a different face, a different body, a different life. And consumerism became very good at turning that tiny internal gap into a story. The story usually sounds harmless. This thing will make life easier. This thing will make people see you differently. This thing will make the version of yourself in your head finally match the version the world can see. But the strange part is that the purchase is not really the center of it. The purchase is just the visible moment. The deeper change happens earlier, in the attention, in the anticipation, in the way the brain starts scanning the world for what can be bought next. One study watched people inside a brain scanner while they looked at products and prices. Before people even made the final decision to buy or not buy, different parts of the brain were already reacting to desire, cost, and the pain of paying.
That is the unsettling part. Consumerism does not need to control the whole mind. It only needs to reach the moment before the mind has explained itself.
And once that happens enough times, a person can live inside a loop that feels completely normal. Feel a small lack. See a thing. Imagine a better self. Buy, browse, save, compare, return, repeat. This is how consumerism rewired the brain, not in one dramatic moment, not like a machine being rebuilt overnight, more like a path in the grass getting walked over every day until the path starts looking like the only way through. Point 1. The purchase starts before the purchase. There is a moment before you buy something where the decision already starts to feel alive. The strange part is how quickly the brain can turn an object into a future. A person sees a pair of shoes, and almost nothing has happened yet. No card has been tapped. No package has arrived. No one has noticed anything different. But the mind is already running a small movie. In that movie, the shoes are not just shoes. They are walking into a room with more confidence. They are a cleaner version of the self. They are proof that life is moving. They are proof that taste exists. They are proof that the person is not falling behind. I think this is where consumerism became powerful. It stopped selling objects as objects. It sold the emotional trailer that plays before the object is even owned. That is why the moment before buying can feel better than the moment after buying. Before the purchase, the object is still perfect. It has not been worn. It has not become normal. It has not been placed into real life, where it has to compete with laundry, bills, work, boredom, and the same old mood from yesterday. The fantasy is clean because reality has not touched it yet.
In the brain, desire is often not a calm thought. It is a pull. It makes the future feel closer. It gives the object a glow. And modern consumer culture learned to aim directly at that glow.
The product page, the lighting, the review count, the limited stock warning, the model who looks like they already lived the life being promised. All of it gathers around that one fragile moment where the brain is still asking, could this change something? The purchase is just the receipt. The rewiring begins when the object becomes a possible self. Point 2. The missing piece became a lifestyle. Consumerism gets much stronger when normal life starts to feel unfinished. Because then every ordinary moment can be turned into a problem with a product attached to it. A kitchen is not just a kitchen anymore. It is a sign of who has taste. A morning routine is not just a morning routine. It is a sign of who has discipline. Clothes are not just clothes. They are evidence of class, personality, fitness, self-respect, confidence, and sometimes even moral worth. This is where the brain starts to get trained in a quiet way. It learns to look at life and ask, what is missing here? Not what is needed. Missing is different. Need has an endpoint. Hunger ends when the body is fed. Cold ends when the body is warm. But missing can expand forever, because missing is attached to imagination. There is always a better version, a better desk, a better lamp, a better protein powder, a better planner, a better skincare routine, a better phone camera for memories that might never be looked at again.
And the more the brain practices that question, the more natural it feels.
Consumerism does not only place products in front of people. It teaches a way of seeing. It teaches the eye to notice gaps. The room becomes a list of upgrades. The body becomes a list of corrections. The personality becomes a list of things to signal. The person can still have a full life from the outside. Friends, work, food, shelter, entertainment, comfort. But inside the consumer mind, fullness is hard to feel because there is always one more thing that would make the picture cleaner. That is why the missing piece became a lifestyle. It is not one product. It is the habit of treating the self as almost complete. Point 3. The reward fades faster than the desire. The part nobody likes to admit is that the best version of the product usually exists before it arrives. After it arrives, the brain starts doing something much colder. It gets used to it. The new phone becomes the phone. The new jacket becomes the jacket. The new apartment becomes the place where the same mind wakes up. The thing that looked like it would shift the mood becomes part of the background, and then the mind starts scanning again. This is not because people are weak. It is because the brain is built to adapt. If every good thing stayed emotionally loud forever, ordinary life would be impossible. A person would never get used to anything. The first warm shower, the first soft bed, the first good meal, the first compliment. Everything would keep shouting at the same volume. So the brain turns the volume down. Consumerism depends on this. It sells the spike, but it survives because the spike fades. The strange thing is that the desire can survive longer than the pleasure. A person can remember how good wanting felt and mistake that memory for proof that the next thing will finally last. So the brain learns a rhythm. Wanting feels alive. Buying feels like release. Owning becomes quiet. Quiet starts to feel like lack again. There is an old study about lottery winners that makes this uncomfortable. The people who won large amounts of money were not happier than the control group, and they reported less pleasure from everyday things. The huge reward did not simply lift ordinary life. In some ways, it made ordinary life less vivid by comparison. That is the hidden risk of constant upgrading. The brain does not only get used to what it has, it can also get used to expecting life to feel upgraded. And once that expectation becomes normal, normal starts to feel like failure. Point 4. The mirror started watching back.
There was a time when advertising had to guess what kind of person you were. Now it watches the tiny moments where even you may not know yet. Old advertising was loud, but in a simple way. A billboard could see traffic, not a soul. A television commercial could interrupt millions of people, but it could not know which person paused, which person lingered, which person almost clicked, which person came back at 1:14 in the morning. Modern consumerism has a different texture. It feels less like a salesman shouting and more like a mirror that keeps learning which reflection makes someone stop. The ad does not always need to say, "Buy this." Sometimes it only needs to place a possible life in front of the brain at the exact moment the brain is soft enough to imagine it. A person watches a video about cleaning a room, then sees the storage boxes, watches a video about anxiety, then sees the supplement, watches a video about becoming attractive, then sees the clothes, the face cream, the workout app, the hair tool, the course, the ring light, the new identity waiting inside a checkout page. This is why the modern version can feel so personal. It does not only target what people like, it targets what people almost believe about themselves.
The brain starts to experience the feed as a strange kind of self-knowledge. If the same kind of product keeps appearing, maybe that desire is real. If the same lifestyle keeps appearing, maybe that is the life that was missing. If the same flaw keeps being reflected back, maybe the flaw is obvious to everyone.
But the feed is not a therapist. It is not a friend. It is not a wise inner voice. It is a machine that learned which forms of wanting keep attention alive. That is why it can feel intimate without being kind.
It studies the pause, then sells the meaning of the pause back to the person who made it.
Point 5. Identity became something to maintain.
The most exhausting part of consumerism is not buying things. It is keeping up with the version of yourself that the last purchase promised.
A person can buy a product once, but an identity has to be maintained. The minimalist version of the self needs the right neutral objects. The productive version needs the right tools. The healthy version needs the right powders, bottles, watches, shoes, meals, and morning light. The stylish version needs to keep changing, because style that stops moving eventually becomes evidence of being behind.
This is where consumerism becomes more than a market. It becomes a calendar. There is always a new season, a new aesthetic, a new standard, a new body, a new format for the same old insecurity. The self becomes something with updates, and every update makes the previous self feel slightly expired.
That does something strange to memory.
Old purchases stop looking like choices and start looking like former attempts. The closet becomes a museum of past selves. The drawer becomes a graveyard of systems that were supposed to organize life. The bathroom shelf becomes a timeline of faces the person tried to become.
None of this has to be dramatic on the surface. It can look normal. Everyone buys things, everyone changes, everyone tries versions of themselves on. But consumerism adds pressure to that normal change. It suggests that identity is not something lived, it is something assembled, something visible, something proven through taste, brand, routine, body, space, and signal. And because identity is never finished, the buying never fully ends. The brain learns to ask a question that sounds like self-expression, but often feels more like self-surveillance.
What does this say about me?
Point 6. Boredom became a threat.
One of the quietest changes is what happened to empty time.
The brain used to meet boredom more often.
Now, boredom gets interrupted before it can say anything. Standing in line used to be standing in line. Waiting for a friend used to be waiting for a friend. Sitting alone in a room used to leave the mind with its own loose thoughts. Not always pleasant thoughts, not always deep thoughts. Sometimes just static, irritation, daydreaming, memory, hunger, restlessness. Now those moments are quickly filled. A hand moves to a phone almost before the feeling has a name. The feed opens, products appear, inside jokes, inside stories, inside faces, inside routines, inside the soft background of daily life. The person may not be shopping, but the brain is still being placed in a shopping world. This matters because boredom is not only empty, it is also the place where desires can settle down. When a want appears and nothing feeds it, it often changes shape. It becomes less urgent. It becomes clearer. Sometimes it disappears. Consumer culture shortens that space. It gives the brain something to want before the old want has cooled off. It turns a blank moment into a row of possible futures. A new object, a new body, a new trip, a new meal, a new room, a new face, a new life with better lighting. And after enough repetition, stillness can start to feel wrong.
Not peaceful, not neutral, wrong.
The brain becomes used to stimulation as proof that life is moving. When the stimulation stops, the person does not only feel bored, they can feel behind, unseen, unchosen, unstarted. That is one of the deepest forms of rewiring. A natural human pause becomes an error message. Point 7. Comparison became the map. Consumerism became more powerful when products stopped appearing alone.
They started appearing inside other people's lives.
A handbag on a white background is one thing. The same handbag on someone with perfect skin in a clean apartment with friends laughing off camera is something else. The object becomes tied to a whole emotional climate. The brain does not only see the thing, it sees the life around the thing.
That is why comparison is so central now. People are not only comparing money, beauty, homes, clothes, or vacations. They are comparing atmosphere. They are comparing ease. They are comparing the feeling that someone else has found the right way to be alive.
And consumerism is always nearby, offering objects as evidence that the gap can be closed. This is not just envy. Envy is older than advertising. Humans have always watched each other. The newer part is how quickly comparison is converted into a market path. Someone else looks calm, and there is a candle. Someone else looks disciplined, and there is a planner. Someone else looks loved, and there is a perfume. Someone else looks free, and there is a suitcase. The emotion points outward, then the product catches it. After a while, the brain starts using comparison as a map. It asks where the other person is ahead, what signals they have, what proof they show, what can be copied, what can be bought, what can be displayed. The problem is that comparison has no final destination. There is always someone cleaner, richer, softer, fitter, younger, calmer, more desired, more effortless, more complete. Consumerism did not invent that pain. It just made the pain searchable. Point 8. Every feeling became a market. The most complete form of consumerism happens when even discomfort stops feeling private. Every uncomfortable feeling arrives with a product category waiting nearby. Tiredness has an aisle. Loneliness has an app. Insecurity has a routine. Aging has a serum. Sadness has a delivery order. Disorganization has a planner. Lack of meaning has a course. Bad sleep has a device. A messy identity has a wardrobe. At first, this can feel comforting. The feeling has a name. The name has a solution. The solution has reviews. Other people bought it. Other people improved. Other people became the after picture.
But something changes when the brain learns to translate feelings into things too quickly.
The feeling is no longer allowed to be mysterious. It becomes a shopping prompt. It becomes a problem to solve in public with objects, systems, upgrades, and proof. There is a study on materialism and well-being that looked across hundreds of effect sizes from many independent samples. The pattern was not flattering. Stronger materialistic values were linked with lower well-being, especially when materialism was measured as a broader way of valuing money, image, possessions, and status. That does not mean every purchase harms the mind. That would be too simple and too false. Some purchases bring comfort, safety, beauty, relief, and real use. The deeper issue is what happens when the market becomes the first language for inner life. A person feels uneasy, and the brain immediately searches for an external fix. A person feels ordinary, and the brain looks for something that can make ordinary look intentional. A person feels empty, and the brain looks for something with a tracking number. This is how consumerism rewires attention. It trains the mind to notice purchasable exits before it understands the room it is trying to leave.
Point 9. The child consumer never left.
The wiring starts earlier than most people want to think about.
Long before a person has money, the brain can already learn what wanting is supposed to feel like. A child sees a toy in an ad, but the toy is rarely alone. It is surrounded by excitement, friendship, color, speed, music, approval. The product is placed inside a feeling before the child has the tools to separate the object from the promise around it. That is one reason childhood advertising is so revealing. It shows the system before it becomes polite. In one longitudinal study, researchers followed hundreds of children over a year. The children who were more exposed to television advertising became more materialistic over time, and the link worked through increased desire for advertised products. The important part is not only the children wanted more things. Children are supposed to want things. The important part is that repeated exposure helped shape a broader value system. The desire for specific products spilled into a way of seeing possessions as more important. Adult consumerism is more refined, but it often uses the same structure. Show the person a feeling. Attach the feeling to an object. Repeat until the object feels like the doorway. The adult version has better design, better targeting, better language, and more shame hidden under taste. The child wants the toy because it looks like joy. The adult wants the apartment, the car, the face, the watch, the kitchen, the body, the brand, because each one still carries a version of the same promise. If this is owned, something inside will finally feel different. That is the child consumer still speaking. Not childish in a mocking way, human in a vulnerable way. Point 10. The brain did not become broken. The final twist is that consumerism did not rewire the brain by making it stupid.
It rewired the brain by using things the brain already does well. The brain is supposed to notice rewards. It is supposed to learn from cues. It is supposed to compare. It is supposed to imagine futures. It is supposed to care about belonging, status, beauty, comfort, novelty, and safety.
Consumerism did not invent those circuits. It built a world around them.
That is why the loop can feel so natural. The person is not being forced from the outside like a puppet. They are being met through real human needs. The need to be seen, the need to feel capable, the need to become, the need to escape discomfort, the need to feel that life is not just repeating itself.
The market became fluent in those needs.
And because the needs are real, the products do not have to be completely fake. A good coat can be useful. A beautiful room can bring calm. A tool can make work easier. A trip can become a memory. A gift can carry love.
The danger was never that objects mean nothing.
The danger is when objects are asked to mean everything.
When the jacket must create confidence. When the phone must create identity. When the room must create peace. When the body must create worth. When the purchase must prove that the self is still moving toward a better version.
That is too much weight for a thing to carry.
And when it fails, consumerism has another thing waiting.
So the question behind consumerism is not only why people buy so much. The deeper question is why wanting started to feel so urgent.
A brain trained by consumer culture does not simply want objects. It wants relief from the feeling of being unfinished. It wants proof that life is changing. It wants a visible sign that the private self is becoming real.
And that is why the loop is so hard to see from inside it.
It does not always feel like greed. It often feels like hope.
Hope that the next thing will make life cleaner. Hope that the next upgrade will make the self easier to live with. Hope that the next version will finally quiet the gap between who someone is and who they imagine they could be.
But the quietest truth is that the brain can learn a loop without that loop being the whole person. Wanting can appear without being a command. A product can glow without being a destiny. A flaw can be seen without becoming a shopping list. A blank moment can feel strange without being an emergency. Consumerism rewired the brain by teaching it to treat desire as evidence. Evidence that something is missing. Evidence that life is behind. Evidence that the self needs to be improved, shown, corrected, and completed. But desire is not always evidence. Sometimes it is just a spark passing through a system that has been trained to turn sparks into sales. And maybe the most human part of the brain is not the part that wants. Maybe it is the part that can watch wanting appear and not immediately become it.